Hey everybody, Edo here, and I am excited because I have Eric Slauson on the line. Say hello, Eric.
Hey, hey.
Hey! And actually, many people might not know this, but you're a designer, and you're working on a solo, sort of fun little extra adventure in the Skull Hollow universe.
Yes, I'm so pumped for
Yeah,
this.
it's super exciting. We've been working on that with Jesse Wright and a number of other folks. But I actually didn't know who you were. I know
Sure.
Jesse. Jesse and I have worked together on a lot of stuff. We've always been working on a project, and he was like, we were sort of starting to pitch it and come up with what this solo little adventure game was, and he was like, "All right, it's all cool, but I want Eric to help and be a part of this design." And I was like, okay, whatever. It's one cut. You guys, the deal's going to be the same. We can work all that. And he was like, yeah. And then I look you up, and you're like, oh, this guy has a game being released with Bicycle, which to me is like this big deal. Like, they're not necessarily the biggest in board games, but it's like Bicycle Cards Bicycle. And I'm like, why
Sure.
haven't I ever heard of this guy? And I'm like looking at your portfolio, and it sort of is that there's Nerd Words. Is that what it's called?
Nerd
Nerd
Science.
Words, which is with Covey and Genius Games. He's interviewed. I've talked to him a number of times. Super cool dude. But like seemingly out of nowhere. And so the question is, and you know, that's never the story. But so to kick things off, to sort of bring people into your biography, like how did you get into games? How did you start designing? How did you land like this big deal? Like what's that narrative?
Yeah, so that's a year's story. So
We got
getting into
time.
games, getting into games, like I did the normal like childhood of playing Scrabble and Yahtzee and stuff. Monopoly. Learned to hate that as a child, as as we all do. And then in college, I got like super into like Scrabble, like competitively.
Competitive Scrabble player.
Yeah,
all right.
like really serious about that. And then also playing a lot of like Cards Against Humanity at parties. And then after college, I got into we started buying party games and starting like a game group, my friends and I, and kind of Cards Against Humanity was like always a staple, and we played it like every week. And eventually, like I kind of started wearing on me, and I was like, this was the first time.
What?
Like,
There's no lot to that game.
It's the first time I'd ever gotten tired of a game, like played it enough to like have figured it out or started seeing like how the sausage is made. Like, oh wait, we're not doing
Almost
any...
like literally in that
Yeah.
game. Keep going. That's like one of the questions for a blank one. But all right,
Exactly.
so you're playing that. You play it. You play it out.
And so then I was like, I started researching, like reading about the design of the game and like, pros and cons, like people who are in favor of it, people who don't like it, and really focusing on the reviews of people who like kind of dissected it and, a player choice and, how the prompts are written and all this kind of stuff. And
Sure.
I kind of came to the realization, like we have no agency in what is happening. Like, it's
Did you
it's
use
funny.
the word? No, agency is a good word. Did you use the word agency at the time, or had you not yet come to that word?
I had not come to that word. That was like
Okay.
the first time. Player choice and agency, these are like the new concepts
It's
to me.
Those are board game designer words.
So the first like game that I designed was a like a party game where you had to like make up your own jokes. And we tried that at game night. And it went over really well. People had fun with it, and I was like, "Oh yeah, like this is more what I want. Like it's still funny. We're still like able to, be crass or whatever, but like
Sure.
it takes a little bit of creativity and how much you push the envelope and you playing to each other's like personality types." So,
So wait, a couple questions. What were you going to school for already? Because you weren't like going to school for board game design.
I was not.
What were you actually? What did you actually study?
I went for English education.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was going to be an English teacher, which I ended up being for 9 years. And so like writing and creativity and storytelling
Sure.
and all that kind of stuff is like, I've always consumed media and stories, comic books and movies and books and stuff. And so it's weird that board games is such a blind spot. Like
Well,
the
yeah, but it does. I mean, at least it explains. You're playing this game and you're having fun with it and thinking about wordplay and jokes, and I mean, it sort of ties to language a lot. So okay,
Sure.
so fast forward, you're like, I can do better, and
Yes.
you get some. I mean, are these just blank? Are these index cards basically, or what did you?
Yeah, so actually, I whenever I get into like a hobby, I get way deep into it really fast.
Oh,
So
you're like, no, Ed, these were Game Crafter prints. Come on.
I made a game crafter print of my first prototype.
That's
Like
good. That's
I
good. That's
found
nice.
out about, oh, you can get these games printed. So I like did the whole, like, I learned Nandeck, I learned, how to set everything up, and got these like professional cards printed and stuff. It's really silly in retrospect,
Hey,
but it was
I'm
cool.
sure your friends were impressed. They were like,
Yeah.
Is this a published game? How did you get these cards?" It's like a parlor trick. Okay,
Yeah,
and so you make this joke game, and people enjoy it,
sure.
but that's still a far cry from Bicycle. So like, keep going.
Yes. Yeah. So then I started like, okay, I can do better. I wonder if I can make like a game. So I tried to make like a dudes on a map game. And that was definitely
But
on,
you didn't call it a dudes on the map game at that point, dude.
it was not dudes on a map. It was, Tales of Asteria.
Tales of
It was,
Asteria. See, that's the English major coming in right there.
yes, yes. Classic, fantasy knights and kings battling for supremacy, the whole nine. And that was definitely on index cards. And that one went over fine. And then I made like a World War II like battle sim game. That one was fine. And but I
Fine.
was kind of
Is fine like, yeah, everyone played it once but never wanted to play it again? Is that
yes,
fine? Okay.
yes. We had a lot of fun with Tales of Hysteria for one night, but that was it. And I kind of was
Attendance
like,
to the game nights is starting to go down as you're going through this process. Like,
yeah,
where is everybody?
yeah. I was like, oh, what's your feedback? Like, what would you want to change? And they have like no feedback, or like,
Well,
don't even.
not everyone's a professional playtester, right? Like, not everyone necessarily has that. Okay, but so you do dudes on a map, you do a war game.
Sure. And then I decide, like, I got to get somebody else to play my game who's not a friend. So I started researching like how do people play test, and I found out about Protospiel.
All right.
And like again,
And
I
is this
didn't.
all in Virginia? Because you're living in Virginia now, but is this
Yeah.
is this all taking place?
Well, the first one that I went to was in Chelsea, Michigan,
Oh.
because I
That's
didn't
not
know
a short drive. That is not close.
I didn't know that there were other ones.
There are more
And-
now than there were, for sure.
Yeah. And there was one coming up in like a week or something. It was like my birthday weekend, and I was like, "Oh, let's do it!" Like it was over the summer. I wasn't doing anything else, so I drove to Chelsea, Michigan, and went to this convention. Did my due diligence to find out what conventions were like, and I was expecting like like a massive,
Oh,
convention.
yes. For those listening, a Protospiel is not a convention.
Yes.
It's one room with 30 people in it, or 50. It depends on the size, but it is a small gathering of friends and locals.
Yes, I was very surprised. But I got
But think
I
of
met,
all the states you drove through.
a lot of corn states. But yeah, I met a lot of friends there that I still have today, and that was my first experience with playtesting, like with other people, and then I was hooked. And fast forward, I ended up designing more games, going to bigger and bigger conventions. Geekway to the West. I went to Origins and PAX Unplugged around there sometime the first year that it launched, and Unpub ended up being the one that I went to every year for prototyping, because it's a little bit bigger. It's still a prototyping convention.
Sure.
If you don't,
Yeah, that's
you're
a
not
little bit
familiar.
more of a bigger thing. And then also, just to back up for a second, for those again, because there's a mixture of people who watch these, or some of them more than others, but a lot of people are aspiring designers and creators. But I think what's important to realize is, and it's really hard right now, obviously with COVID and stuff, but how valuable it is to like go to protospiels and conventions. Like, everyone's story is a little bit different, but it's sort of like being the kid the lonely kid in high school that gets to college and then finds out there are other people like you and like who like enjoy what you enjoy. Like I think a proto spiel is a really great way to be like, oh, there are other people that like board games and like creating them and getting looped into that community, like person to person. I think, you know, gets a lot of inspiration and also just an understanding of how things are done, even though you'd obviously done all the research. So I think it's a really valuable thing. There's a lot of online ones, you know. It is what it is right now, but hopefully we get to a point where we can start doing them again. But okay, you're like full tilt. I'm going to conventions. I'm going to cons. Are you still teaching?
I am still teaching.
Okay, but you're a teacher, so your summer is like you're still like in high school. You go. Okay,
I'm deciding.
Like you know, my brother's was an English teacher and is now a principal. So, but okay, so you're going on pub. And, all right. Keep going.
And I have my all of my wares. You know, at this point, I've been designing for like 3 years, I think. So I have several like party games I've worked on. You know, some other games, and I have a table for 4 hours, and I say, okay, I'm going to play each game for an hour, and you know, change my sign out every hour. You usually have a sign that says "looking for players" or something. And so I brought out Tattoo Stories, which at the time was called No Regrets, but like misspelled. And
it's tough to have a typo in your title as a general thing, but it is a nice title.
Yeah, that was the contention, was that it's hard to say it incorrectly and Googleability and all that stuff. So
you're never going to get past a professional marketing team with a... You could have, on some Kickstarter, you could have done it, but once you hit bicycle, there's no way you have a typo in your title then.
Yeah. So I set it up, and a group came and started playing it, and just like had a blast with it. And then another group walked by and saw, you know, how much fun they were having. And so when that group got up, another group came and sat down. And that was like one of the first times that had happened, where somebody was like, oh, can we play next? And so that was like really exciting. And then that happened for 4 hours. Like people just kept, like there was a crowd, you know, next to the table. People were really excited to see each other's tattoos, so on and so forth. So,
and so just for actually, I haven't played it. Bicycle sent me a game, but they sent me Alpha. But is it, hey, draw a tattoo of this? I mean, what's the basic? Is it Pictionary? What's the...
You got it. It's basically like you designed it. No, so you're playing as tattoo artist at a tattoo parlor, and a customer comes in and they know all the stuff that they like, but they don't know how to put it together into one tattoo. So a customer player, or like the judge each round, gives you 5 things, and you have to mishmash them together into one design. So if you like candy and horses, I might make a unicorn, but like with a candy corn horn, something. And you know,
since it's player judges, if it looks terrible, maybe it's even better because it looks terrible, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. I haven't done it yet, but I wanted to film a video. Maybe I'll do it later tonight on this idea of, you know, ideas versus execution. There's like a lot of narrative around right now about how like ideas are dime a dozen and it's all about execution. Like I think Jamie Stegmaier had done a video and a bunch of people were talking about it. But like the reason I wanted to do the video is I think it absolutely, ideas are not a dime a dozen. Like some ideas are just better than other ideas, and certain ideas have that hook that like execution is just like, don't mess it up. Like all the execution has to do is not ruin the idea as it's going through, and execution can ruin an idea. But like, oh, it's a game about drawing tattoos, whatever the game rules are, which I'm sure were great. But like, it's like, oh, okay, like you can relate
People
to
get
it. I remember when Keith was telling me about, Keith Mateka was telling me about cartographers, and he's like, well, yeah, and you're doing a fantasy map, and I'm like, are you making a game where like me as a player gets to make a fantasy map? And he was like, well, you do this with cards, but I'm like, that's the hook, right? I get to make a fantasy. And he was like, yeah. I was like, you win. You just won. That is a winning idea. Don't mess it up. Okay, so were any of those people that came by and played Bicycle, or is that another step down?
Yeah. So I had a great weekend, got a lot of play testing, and then I did some official pitches. Nothing like came of those, and so I'm like, man, you know, you struck out again, kind of thing. And then I am like flying home or driving home, And I get an email, and it's from somebody from Bicycle, and they're like, "Oh, we had a great time playing Tattoo Stories at your table. Like, thanks for talking to us, and so on and so forth." And so, like, essentially, I like accidentally pitched the game, like
Sure.
which
Like,
is
I mean, like, I can only imagine you're telling your few board game friends and designers, whoever your friend crew was at that time, and they're like, "Wait, what? Bicycle reach out to you?"
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
what?
They
That
had just started looking for games, and there was like one blog post they had posted, like, "Hey, we're looking for games," and you can actually go back. There's like message boards about whether it's like a scam or not,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
whether
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
real. And,
They're like, we're
so
sitting on all this money we don't know what to do with. There seems to be a bunch of money over there, and we just keep printing these cards. Maybe
yeah,
we
I
should make a
know.
bunch of games.
Let's try something else. So yeah, I was like, why not? Let's try it. And they said we're launching with 3 games. We want yours to be one of the first 3.
I mean, and that was absolutely it. I mean, you were one of the premier. It was your game, Alpha, and there was one other. What was it?
It was Shuffle Grand Prix. It's Blunderful and Tattoo Stories were the first 3.
Oh, and then Alpha was after.
Yeah, that's their next wave.
The
That's
next
their
wave, next wave. Yeah, and so okay, and so that's huge, right?
yeah.
And
I mean, yeah. Once it kind of sunk in that it was real, then you get like the pressure of being one of the first in like 100 and something years that they're trying something different.
and it's a sort of risky game. I mean, it's not crazy risky, but it's not like if I was like, hey, I want to like enter this space and just have like a good offering, like new designer first title tattoos might not be what I would pick, right?
Sure.
So they must have
And
really
it's a
liked
drawing game.
and it's a drawing game.
Yeah, which is challenging.
It is. It's a little mass market, but I mean, and they did a good job with the box and getting that vibe across.
Yeah.
But I mean, and I think just again, one of the cool things about the story, and I asked you a couple questions, but as I told you, like I like doing these where I don't know the answers to all these questions. Is it's basically like, hey, yeah, you can go to Protospiels, pitch your games. Companies are there at different ones. Unpub's pretty popular, or at a Gen Con one, and if the game's good and they're at the right time and what they're looking for, like they'll just write you an email.
Yeah. And so one of the things too is like, and the more conventions I go to, the more I see this. And whenever I talk to designers, I talk about networking and obviously like there's the professional side of that, like trying to make meetings, trying to do like professional things, but also just treating people like every player who comes to demo the game, like you don't know who that person is, and so, while it was, I didn't know that they were Bicycle, basically everybody who sat down that during that 4 hours got a pitch, like here's my game, here's why it's fun, let's play it. I'm praising their tattoos, I'm talking, I'm letting them give me feedback, I'm writing it down, and it's the same thing at conventions. I see all the time, like publishers walk up and they'll, they have like their little publisher badge and they'll turn it around before they talk to somebody, to get like a sincere reaction from people. So, you should treat people well anyway. But
no. I mean, it's an important lesson. I mean, certainly also you never just, you never know who's a food critic or somebody else walking. You never know who anyone is, honestly.
Yeah, really.
But for sure, and I've been in tons and tons of demos and previews, and protospiels and that kind of things. Either I have stuff there, or I'm just looking around, or I used to just hang out a lot with James Matthey at these events and handle the things with him. But there was like a lot of people. I mean, the challenge is not everyone. You have such a glowing personality. You're so alive. I mean, it's that English teacher, right? But like, not everyone has. Not every designer. There are great designers that just suck with people, right? And,
it is hard.
And so, if you're somebody who can't handle like selling and playing, never hurts to at least then find a friend, because that like it's sort of like the box impression to a new player, right? Like it's not just the game, it's the purchase of the game, it's the opening of the game, it's the rules, right? And so it's the same thing with a demo. If like the dude is there, or the dudette, the woman is there, and they're pitching to you, but they're like not interested, or they're on their phone while they're talking to you, you just don't care. If it doesn't look like they care, why would you care, type of thing.
Yeah, it's the whole package. And yeah, the idea of bringing a friend to like even at that original proto spiel that I went to, I had a really hard time playing my party games because 90% of the people there were there with heavier games, strategy games, like really chunky stuff. And so I bring out like, hey, we're going to draw these monsters or whatever. We're going to draw these tattoos. And they were not like super into it. And I found like one guy who was also there with a party game, and so we played each other's games, and then he knew someone else who had like played his party game and knew they were into party games, and so we ended up over the course of the weekend kind of being able to find an enclave of like 15 to 20 people, party gamers. And so
and even that's really important, right? I think people get stuck on audience and the idea that like not everyone likes every type of game. And like finding your audience is pretty important for a Kickstarter or for your product in general. So
right.
We're gonna pull back into the story here because like you do this bicycle deal, it's moving, but that's gonna have some time. They're gonna go through their process. They've never done this before.
Sure.
And you can't be like badging up and be like, I'm the bicycle guy. Like it hasn't really happened.
Secret.
Yeah. It's well, I don't know if it was a secret, but it's not. You can't use it to get your next game signed, right? I'm sure right now people are like, oh, he designed a game for a bicycle. He must be pretty awesome. I can't get a bicycle. It's like having a Hasbro design in a certain way. It's a much smaller. I don't actually know. Maybe they're a bigger company, but their prestige is not in the same space.
They're working on it.
They're working on it. Sure. Well, there's no reason. I mean, they're probably like Nintendo, where it's like if you look on the Wikipedia page, it's like 30 is when we first did our first cards. Okay, but so then the next one is Nerdwords with Genius Games, right? And so Genius Games, if for those who are not aware, were lots of like little games that were learning games about biology or viruses or, and John just like built on that educational thread like he was getting 100,000, 200,000, 300,000. If my memory serves me right, in Kickstarter, he then started the book line. Like he went hard in puzzles into like educational gaming and learning.
Yeah.
So how did you overlap with that?
Yeah. So I met John at at Geekway to the West, which is a convention outside of St. Louis, which is where Genius Games is based. And he played one of my party games called Everybody Poops.
Great title, another great title.
Thank you. That should be coming out early next year.
Comes out every day, buddy.
Yeah,
every day.
It does.
Keep going.
If you're a coffee drinker.
Yeah.
So he played this game. I had no idea who he was. Just this guy who was like laughing until he was crying from my poop game. And
John's not. He's like clean
smart.
cut. Smart, but he doesn't strike you as like a big gamer like when he walks. He's like he's very straight laced, principles like a good. Anyway, keep going.
So I ran into him later, and he was like, "Man, I cannot stop thinking about that poop game. Like it's it was so funny and like it's so dumb, but like it's also smart and blah blah blah. Like, can I send you an email about like some things? Like, what are you working on?" And I was like, "Yeah, send me an email." And I tried to play it cool, but inside I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, And so he sent me an email, and we reconnected at another convention. And he said, "Hey, like I can't find any like educational party games. Do you think you could make a party game that has science in it?" And I said, "Sure, like give me a few weeks. I'll see what I can think up. And actually on like the plane ride home, I had this idea for Nerdwords, and play tested it a little bit with some people and pitched it to him. And he just fell in love with it. And they play tested it like that night in there. They have like a little playtesting group for the company, and they loved it. And that one was really, really fast.
And I'm looking at the cards here.
Mm-hmm.
Is it like one? Is it basically make up the definition of this word, or how does this work?
So you're trying to get your team to guess a word, and they're all science vocabulary words, like middle school, high school level vocabulary.
Diploid, flagella.
Yes.
These are.
Osmosis.
Anyone who remember. All right, so I could keep going.
And so you have to give a clue one word at a time, but the words have to start with a letter in the word. So it's kind of like a double layer clue.
Do you get to tell them which letter it is?
Yes. So like
Okay.
for example, if I'm trying to get you to guess volcano, I might say ash or lava or something.
Right.
So you know that the word has something to do with ash and lava, and you also know that there's an A in it and there's an L in it. And so you're giving
Do I
clues
have like a
that
little pad where I'm writing this? Okay.
yeah.
This is a
So
pretty
you have
nerdy game,
pads.
man.
It is very nerdy, yeah. It's both science nerdy and English nerdy, so it's like to my two loves together. Yeah, so it's been really, really fun. Teachers love it. We put like some blank cards in there so teachers could use like their own vocabulary words. It's been really popular. So that one was really fun, and it was cool. Again, being like Genius Games' first like uh, party game, our first like lighter kind of social game. Um,
Well, so now
so yeah,
now I'm it's okay, right? Okay, now I'm super curious. All right, so you're like, I'm a party game guy. I've been playing party games. I did some other things. People said it was fun, but never wanted to play them again. Whatever. and so I got a party game that with bicycle about tattoos, awesome. Novel, interesting stuff. Then I do this word game. So like, why did Jesse think you'd be a good fit for like a solo adventure game?
that's a really good question.
I'm now like, what happened? Like, how did?
So I know Jesse from Meeple Syrup. They do like a Maple Syrup show on
You're not
Facebook.
Canadian though, are you?
I'm not Canadian. No,
There's nothing
I
wrong
just,
with Canadians, but I'm just
I know
they're all
a
Canadians
lot
over
of
there.
Canadians. Yeah, from the board game world, like 50% of them are Canadian. So yeah, I watched Meeple Syrup like every Wednesday for years, and really active in the chat. Just kind of giving my own thoughts about design and whatnot. And we kind of like kept connecting. Like he would say something, and I would like, oh, what about this? And kind of put my own spin on it. He'd be like, oh, that's really cool. And he started like sending me messages after the show would end, like, oh, I saw in chat you mentioned this. Are you interested in this? And we kind of had our own side conversations, and we started talking about RPGs, and like I've DM'd like D&D, and whenever I DM D&D, I always wrote my own campaigns and stuff, and so we talked about that and games we like, and I guess at some point in there he was like, would you want to work on something? I was like, sure. And then the rest is history. And
Yeah, sure. Well, and it's been interesting, because. So I guess one of the interesting things. So Tattoo Stories was the game you made and you wanted to make, right?
yes,
You get to Nerd Words, and this is a different type of design experience where there was a game that you made that had a certain vibe to it, but then a publisher was like, I don't really want your game the way you have it because I make educational games and I can't have a
yeah,
game with poop in the title, which is not going to work in class.
yeah. Can you make me
Hey,
something else?
yeah, hey, could you, here's the sort of problem space I'd like to feel that vibe in or something, and then you sort of
Yeah.
take off there. And so then with the Skull Hollow stuff, it's sort of I know because I was I was the other party involved. It was very like I had a really specific product sort of footprint, experience, outcome I was looking for, but then I was sort of like whatever you guys want in the middle, just like it's got to stay in the zone.
Yeah.
And Jesse he had gone through a number of iterations that like sort of fouled out. He didn't strike out but he was fouling them out. And then you guys started putting together, but I never had any opportunity. Like I had the opportunity to talk with you guys as we went through, but I never actually saw either of you work. I believe you
Yeah.
work. So when it comes to early process for you in designs, whether it's the ones that are like actually like the games that like super you're inspired by, or the ones that are more like the jobs or the briefs. How do you usually approach design? Like, what's your process?
So I am what's called a theme first designer, or I start with a theme, and pretty much everything follows that. Like I want the mechanics to feel like you are that person. I want the font to be right. I want the rules. If there's a quirk in the rules, I want it to be for like a funny reason. Like in Tattoo Stories, you're not allowed to erase while you're drawing. because it's a tattoo. And so it not only mechanically is good because if you make mistakes, it's fine. Like everybody's going to make mistakes and everybody's is going to end up looking smudged. But thematically, it's also funny, and people are like, "Ha, you can't erase a tattoo."
Sure.
But when I was working with Jesse on this game, that was one of the reasons why he approached me, is because I had talked so much about like bringing stories to life and like theme. And when I was DMing, I was the DM that like went to like Michael's and bought like old looking paper and like hand wrote letters and put them in the oven.
Oh, you're that guy.
Like a old, yeah. And like had gold coins. Like, oh, you found this treasure. You know, like I want you to feel it.
There was this game. I want to say it was called Cutthroat Caverns.
Mm-hmm.
Cutthroat.
That sounds right.
Something, and it was Brian Mendolowski, something along name. I have to look his name up, and I apologize. And I think it was Brian. Now I want to look it up because I'm like, oh god, I'm butchering the whole thing. But I was always impressed because I saw him when he was doing it at conventions and setting up, because they did a Kickstarter and then I think they found a publisher. Oh man, I almost think he like left. I feel like he left. He actually like left Facebook. He's not. I don't think he's making games anymore. Actually, I don't remember. He sort of dropped out for personal reasons. I probably Cutthroat. There's Caverns and Kingdoms. I'm gonna say it's Kingdoms. Oh yeah, Brian Merlongi. Anyway, I was sort of in the ballpark.
You got Brian.
Brian. Well, it was a name that was along the sort of them. I'll take it. But like he was at the conventions and they had the table decked out with the candelabras and they were wearing it and everyone's like telling a story and character. But it wasn't a role playing game. I mean, maybe it had, but it was like just like a board game.
Cards.
Yeah. But they sold it, right? They sold it. Yeah, and so with Jesse, he thought you'd be really good to pull that in and bring it into the game, right?
Yeah, and obviously not going into detail, but it's in this universe, and so it was really important to bring that universe, to the forefront of what is going on in the game. And so we went through several iterations, just the two of us. And both reining each other in, because sure. I'm going very thematic and right. Oh, what if you do this? What if you do this? What if you do this? And he's like, trying to put more mechanics in, and I'm like, oh yeah, that mechanic's cool.
So like when you're pitching stuff, because I'm picky, right? Like so, like you guys went through the full ed treatment in terms of like what you guys are making, but so like when I'm like, oh, keep that, don't keep that. Were you guys like keeping score? It's like one point, Eric.
Basically, like, yeah, okay, yeah, he loved that. We got to make sure we keep that because Ed said he liked it.
Jesse's like, oh,
yeah. But yeah, I think you saw the first one that we pitched to you was probably version 4. And it might have been something that we had like a version previously that was like a very different feel, and then you sent us like an email, like a check-in email that was like, oh, by the way, make sure that it has this or something, or make sure it's not like this. And we were like, oh, trash. let's tweak it a little bit.
Yeah, and it's not I don't mind talking about it a little bit. I mean, that's not the purpose of the Q&A, but like it's what's interesting is I wanted to, for Skull Hollow, which is this 2-player asymmetric game, and we're going to do a sequel with Mel Peak, was just make a game, have the equivalent of sort of a mini expansion, just like an extra little thing that was a small, short add-in, essentially like narrative adventure with the world, because Seth Johnson, who also helped with some of the narrative on that and worked a lot on Skull Hollow, the storytelling all comes out of the play. It's like, oh, I jumped on his shoulder and I blew it off. And it's sort of like, it's like, we talk about this in video games, because I make mobile games too. It's like, it's emergent narrative. It's like, the game is the players playing it. It's not just the story. But then you do have the absence of story. You have the absence of like characters that are like, dude, did this thing at this time.
Sure.
And so there was this nice opportunity between Skull Hollow and Mole Peak to be like, no, there was this little adventure that happened with this dude. But anyway, it's coming along. I think it's going to look great, and I'm excited to put it out. But that's like this fun little small back to Kickstarter. You get this cool, awesome. Apparently, like Game 4 from Eric.
Yeah.
But now, okay, so you've done those other games. Where does Monstrosity? Did I get that right?
Monstrosity.
Monstrosity.
Like
clearly not being published by Bicycle, because they would not approve of that name.
And it's a drawing game, another drawing game.
So does this have a publisher, or what's the story here?
Yes, that's from Deepwater Games, actually. So yeah, I don't know what a weird niche, but like again, it's like their first party game. So I had like Bicycle, their first like party game, and then Nerdwords was Genius's first party game, and then Monstrosity is Deepwater's first party game. So I don't know.
I still don't have a party game,
Yeah, well, but we'll talk.
How are you? So okay, but hold on. How are you? I mean, another sort of COVID related question. Like one of the party games, right? Like inherently, like I don't even do party game reviews anymore currently because it's just such a pain to like I can get my family to play most board games if they're not too heavy, but it's not really like a party game. How are you testing and play testing and doing that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, luckily most of these were signed before that, but the ones that I'm developing now, I feel that the core loop of a party game should be fun enough to probably test it with like 2 people or 3 people.
Oh, sure.
So, my fiance Casey and I, if I have an idea for like a loop, hey, I'm going to try to get you to guess these words, and every word starts with a letter of the word.
You've been spending too much time with game designers, man.
We'll just play around, and it's either good or it's not. It's fun or it's not. It sparks more ideas or it doesn't. Here we're going to try to draw these monsters. Here we're going to make some tattoos. And so if it passes the Casey test of just being fun,
and so like Casey, I would ask you about these core loops. We're going to be talking about the meta game later, but right now we just want to focus.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
And is Casey into games in general, or
she plays games with me? Yes, she loves me very much.
Well, I mean, and are you still teaching, or are you doing both?
I am.
Yeah,
I am. Yeah.
So it's still a jobby for you. It's still the thing you're doing on the side as well as.
It is, yeah. So we play mostly party games and stuff, and then heavier stuff I play at conventions, or I play like solo games and stuff. But yeah, so since she has most of what she plays and that we play together are entry, gateway, party, social kind of things.
Sure.
She has a great, she has that almost like a mass market like sensibility of like, this is fun, like. Don't tell me about the mechanics and like why you phrased the card that way or why it's 5 points versus 7 points.
Leave the game designer at the door.
Yeah, is it fun?
Right.
And I look for the same thing in a 2-player game that I would if I'm playtesting at a convention. Is her like organically laughing or smiling, or like I don't want her to be like, that was fun, at the end. Like I don't want her to tell me it was fun. I need to see in her eyes that she's laughing. Same thing at a convention. If after my party game, if people are like, that was really fun, like, no, I got to do some work. I need people to actually be laughing and to ask to play it again, and be excited, I guess.
Sure. Do you ever, I mean, is it the kind of thing that you also try with kids in school? What grades do you teach?
So I used to teach 6th grade. I taught 6th grade English for 9 years. And then now I'm in high school now. I teach like technology. And I have there's a board game club at the school. And we play like some things, but I did Nerdwords I played with the kids. and Monstrosity I played with the sixth graders. We played that as like a writing exercise, even though it's a drawing game. But
you're just trying to bring it into school. It's cool. It's cool. Awesome. And so you have a bunch of designs, and like a lot of designers sort of fall into that, like maybe I should do a Kickstarter. This, are you sort of in the category of like content as the I'm just going to make games, pass them off to publishers, and like that works for me guy?
Basically, yeah, I've thought about kickstarting, and every time I get to like I'm putting together like a thing to get like a quote or whatever is when a game gets signed. Like I can't sign it.
You're like, Ed, I would do Kickstarters, but my titles get signed too quickly. What am I gonna do?
What am I gonna do? It's like it's like when you can't date, and then you meet somebody, and then finally like everybody wants to date.
Is this something Casey's aware of? I mean, is this cool, man. So cool. And so do you think, I mean, it sounds like, I mean, again, with the exception of the Skull Hollow solo thing, that you're now actually you've landed in this niche, which like calling it a niche isn't like all that accurate, because it's this gigantic behemoth of game and market. Like it's like, and any party game has just so much more upside than or space for growth than a lot of board games, just inherent to the number of players who can play. They're usually supposed to be easy entry. Do you feel like, at the end of the day, like 9 out of 10 of the things you're working on fit that category, or are you trying to get away from it?
Yeah, probably. I think the things that I get excited about, the things that make it past a Google Doc where, I just write down guesses about how the rules work, end up being really high player interaction, social, if not immediately a party game, like, a lot of Take That, or just really high social things. I've tried, several times, like, this is it. I'm going to make I don't know what I'm going to make a lockup. I'm going to make a Charterstone. Like, I'm going to make Clank or whatever. And I get like it's partway into it, and I'm like, just play Clank. Like, just play lockup.
They're a lot of work. They're a lot of work. It's different types of work. I mean, I was struck with we're talking about it. Where is it? But I don't even know. Is it over here? I don't know where I put it because I was looking at it somewhere. Oh, there it is. The stack of there's a lot of different games, but when this is all this narrative, right? Like these cards, this is the prototype of things coming along, but there's like so much text on it. It's so text heavy that like even in a deck of 30 double-sided cards, it's just like, this is a lot of reading. I sure hope somebody's checking for spelling errors and typos.
It is a whole adventure.
It's like a book. Whereas like you'll get something like Herbaceous, where it's like, well, it's a couple decks of cards, and I actually, I find I struggle a little bit with games that are at the like Legendary Creatures or Heroes Welcome, that like are those medium weight games. Mm-hmm. They're harder to play test. They're harder to sort of gauge the fun density. They're harder to there's just a lot of moving parts, and the audience is very different. Like I suspect, because I haven't actually made a party game, but I suspect on the party game side, like you can know pretty quickly whether or not it's working. Yeah. Like you get a bunch of blank faces, you probably should chuck it, right?
You're right. It's really hard, like with gamers, the people who might not be as excited to play a party game, or strategy gamers. Like if your game is excellent, like a lot of times you're gonna get like, oh cool, or like, oh that's really interesting, like I'd play that again. Like you don't get necessarily that huge effusive reaction that you get with like a party game. So I definitely don't have the instincts to gauge whether something is like actually good or not from that. And then two, like um, I like providing an experience that is very unique. I think that's where I keep landing in these niches of doing like the first thing for a company. Is I try to do something, I like fill a gap that I see somewhere, and if I'm starting to make a game and it's like, oh yeah, like this is a trick taker, you know, it's hard for me to get over the hump of like, yeah, but there's the crew, there's Skull King, there's, like my game is probably not going to be better than the crew. So like I should just get people to play the crew. It's hard for me to get over that hump. I hit like this game is fine. The games that I try to make that are games to me seem like this functions, but I don't know.
No, I mean, I think there's a lot to be said. I mean, and some of it's whether you're talking about instinct or what you're good at, right? Like, I have an opportunity to work with a lot of designers and a lot of different folks on products, and I've done my own designs. But sometimes, I'm not gonna design that game as well as you guys have, right? Like, I just know it. And so the only difference is, because I do all sorts of wacky things. Like, I sort of fall into that category of, like, I want to do what I want to do, and I like that it's interesting or different, even if it isn't a hit.
Sure.
But I guess the difference is, for me, it's like, well, I can't do it. So, like, well, I'll go find somebody who can, right? Like, I want to do it. I just need to find somebody to do it. But anyway, so, cool, man.
I like have gotten, like in the, you're talking about kind of getting away from it. I have gotten to work on more and more projects like this, like the Skull Collar game, and that's been fun. I did development work on Trekking the World, which is the sequel to Trekking the National Parks.
I was a huge fan of the first one. I haven't obviously played the second.
Yeah. And that was really, really fun. Again, I knew Charlie Bink, and he again knew that I was theme first, knew I was heavy player interaction, and so they brought me in because the game like worked, but nobody was talking to each other, like there weren't moments, kind of thing, and so I did some like theme fiddling and some player interaction things, and so that was really fun to have like my first developer credit on a game, and again putting that.
I mean, but that's even different, right? Like, I mean, not to criticize them for giving you a developer credit when you should have got a designer credit, but developers certainly solve problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think most developers often are taking something and they're just taking the like the stone and like crafting it, or like the already sort of statue that's sort of in there, and they're polishing it up and chiseling it or whatever. But they were like, there's something missing. Can you help bring that thing missing? But I'll leave that to you guys.
No, I don't think. I think that happens a lot. That last 5-10%, could be something that's, this game really, this push your luck game is working. Like it, you bust, or whatever, but like it doesn't hurt enough when you bust, and then you bring in a developer and they're like, oh, well, what if you have to do something
That's
silly
fair.
when you bust?
I guess it all just depends on the conversation. One conversation is like, hey, can you be a developer? And then you're like, I got this great idea. And they're like, it's great. Or they're like, hey, we want you to come with your great idea, but we're going to... Anyway, it's semantics. So congratulations, man. I mean, it sounds like, you're doing a good job, and you got a big jump in. But at the same point, back 45 minutes ago, it really was just playing games, coming up with ideas, and a very classic, I went to a protospiel, and people... Yep. Just probably your stuff might be more fun than a lot of people's, but but there was this engagement with it, and it's been a success for you. And it certainly seems like as more of these titles hit the market, more people become familiar with it, and start seeing you as sort of an alternative to Cards Against Humanity. I mean, because it should be noted that this all happened when, like, based on the time frame I'm framing in my head, where like, you're in Party Game Explosion Kickstarter party game explosion territory.
Yeah.
Right? Where it's like, oh, I can make a party game with cards where I just write words and words. Like, everyone was pitching those, and then, you know, Exploding Kittens, and this worked, and that worked. You know, so there's a lot of not non-traditional creators, not just your core board game group that were entering this. You sort of entered through board gaming with all the Proto Shields, but there were a lot of people who were just like college guys who were just like, I got an idea, I'll do a Kickstarter. And you know, they have a very different vibe, and some of those games work, some of them don't. But awesome, man. Well, thanks so much for being on. And you know, it's just, like, I think this is the longest extended conversation we've had that's been off of topic, right? I guess we talked about Skulk a little bit, but like, you know,
we went all over the place.
Yeah, all over the place. But no, it's cool, man. And thanks everyone for watching. And I think, like, moral of the story is come up with ideas and show them to people. And in person or
gotta show them to people.
Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot. Bye. Hey everybody, Edo here, and thanks for watching Gaming with Edo. Reviews over here on this playlist, League and Insider videos over here on this one. Subscribe, share, all that good stuff. But most importantly, play some great games. Thanks.